Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to hopefully cut through the confusion that comes with selecting the right eyeshadow palette for you. There are so many eyeshadow palettes constantly being launched. It seems like in the last 6 months to a year, every brand has come out with a new eyeshadow palette or multiple eyeshadow palettes. Every big YouTuber is launching an eyeshadow palette. So how do you pick which one is going to actually work for you? Because there's always a lot of hype surrounding every new release with PR packages that big YouTubers get. They're always putting out videos, swatches, and all of that. And it just seems like, at least to me as a YouTube viewer, I'm seeing a lot of the same videos over and over, and it builds up the hype and it makes you feel, well, when I say the same videos, like the same products being reviewed and promoted. And I'm not saying I don't do the same thing. I don't get a lot of PR, but I still like to review popular products because I know my viewers are going to be interested. So I myself am guilty of helping to perpetuate the hype. And everyone seems to feel this urgency to get the latest release, and then you buy it, you get it home, and maybe you look at it and you think, why did I buy this again? Now, this video is not for those of you makeup junkies who are always going to buy the latest release. Maybe you're a collector of eyeshadow palettes. Maybe you're just a very creative person and you like to play with color. You like having options. I mean, that's how I am. Aside, even if I weren't a makeup artist and I'm not really freelancing much anymore, I just love the colors. I love the different textures and shimmers, and I would say I am more of a collector. This video is more for those of you who are trying to be just really practical. You don't need or want to be buying every new release. You just want one go-to palette, or maybe two, that you have at your vanity that you know you're going to be able to create looks. You're going to be confident in your application, and you're going to be confident that it's going to turn out the way you want it. So hopefully, without making this a 25 to 30 minute video, I'm just gonna go through a couple of things where if I had a friend who was face to face with me, and this has happened before, and they said, Risa, what eyeshadow palette should I buy? I go to Ulta, Sephora, there's so many, or I see all of these new palettes being promoted on social media, and I just don't know which one to buy. So this would be my answer to them. So the first thing I would do is I would look at their eye color and I would establish what kind of tones would look best on them. I have blue eyes. They're more blue in certain lights, more kind of green gray in other lights, but they're blue. My eyes are flattered with warm tones, coppers, bronzes, but I can also wear, they don't bring out my eye color as much, but I can also wear tones like I'm wearing today, some grays, and I actually have like a black smudge on the outer corner, which oftentimes can turn to a gray, but I've worn silvers and I can wear them and I like to wear them, but not everybody can. But getting back to the eye color, that's really what you want to think about first. What tones are going to be most flattering to your eye color? Second, what are you going to be using the palette for? Do you want an eyeshadow palette for every day with just a few neutral colors? Do you want a palette that can go day to night that's mostly matte with a few shimmers? Do you want something that's just for going out at night and you want a lot of shimmers and maybe just a couple of mattes? So try to figure out in your head what you're going to be using this eyeshadow palette for. So once you've established what tones you want, as well as what you're actually going to be using the palette for, day to night, night, then you want to go and, well, obviously you want to establish a price point. Now, price being, affordability is subjective because a $40 eyeshadow palette that maybe contains 4 eyeshadows is no big deal to some people. Other people, if they're going to be spending $40 on an eyeshadow palette, they want at least 8, 10, 12, perhaps 16 colors. So you do have to think about that as far as if you are on a tighter budget and maybe you want to buy a palette for $50 or less or $55 or less, you do have to look at the number of shadows and the amount that's in them for a good price comparison. Now, after establishing those 3 criteria, that's when you can move on to actually looking at eyeshadow palettes. We're going to take one of my favorites, which is the Tartelette in Bloom. So Tarte Tartelette in Bloom is one that I recommend to a lot of people, especially if they say they want something for day to night. They want something that has mattes and has a few shimmers, that has really good pigmentation, really good blendability. Because there are palettes out there that are less expensive than this one, but as I would tell a friend, you have to look at the quality of the product. That sometimes you don't want super pigmented shadows if you're a beginner, but you also don't want chalky, unblendable shadows. And how you determine that is, well, obviously usage, because sometimes swatches don't really give the full picture. However, touching them sometimes can tell the story. If you put your finger in an eyeshadow pan, it should feel somewhat creamy. And then if you take your middle finger and your thumb and go like this, it shouldn't feel dry and chalky. It should still feel almost like silky-ish. And then with the shimmers, they're gonna feel a little bit more grainy, but you want them to really pop on your skin. You don't wanna have to look so closely to see those shimmers. You wanna be able to see them on your finger, perhaps swipe them on your hand and actually see that shimmer. Now, sometimes what you're gonna get is a bunch of glitter particles, and that, unless it specifically says it's a glitter, if you're looking at a shimmer palette but all you're picking up is just a multitude of glitter, that's probably not the highest quality palette. You want a shimmer to be a shimmer and a glitter to be a glitter, and it to tell you that. I also like the color combination of this palette. Now, I consider it to be neutral. There are people, I have been on social media long enough to know that rarely anybody 100% agrees on the tone of a palette. The same, you can ask 10 people if they think an eyeshadow palette is warm or cool, and inevitably, even if 8 say it's warm, 2 are gonna say it's cool. It's very interesting to me, actually, to see what other people's eyes observe. Now, moving on to what I personally look for in a palette, I'm gonna show you one of my most recent favorites. It's the Anastasia Beverly Hills Soft Glam. I think the majority of us would agree that Anastasia really has come up with a great formula of eyeshadows. I actually really enjoy her singles as well. Now, I never bought that palette from last fall. I can't even think of the name of it, that everybody was in an uproar over, Subculture, I think. I was never drawn to the colors in that palette, so I never picked it up. But all the palettes that I've ever purchased from Anastasia Beverly Hills have been wonderful. They do have that real creamy texture. They have a lot of pigment, so you do have to be more careful with your blending if you are a beginner. But what I like about this palette is, for me, I like an eyeshadow palette to have an all-over color, one that I can use as a wash. So if you have light skin, it might be an ivory color. If you have really deep dark skin, it might be a tone that is a little bit more yellow, like a Bobbi Brown. I remember when I worked for Bobbi Brown, her banana eyeshadow was one that we were recommended to use on really dark skins because it gives more of that brightness to the eye, which is what you want that all over wash to give, whether using it to highlight under the brow or covering the whole eye area to help with blendability or set a paint pot or primer or whatever it may be. It's just something that I always look for in a palette. So I like that this has tempera. And then I look for transition colors. And if the palette has a warm transition color and a cooler tone transition color, I really like that. Like with this one, I will usually take a bit of orange soda and burnt orange and put that in my crease as my transition color. But if I want to do a cooler look using the rose pink or sultry, I'll use Dusty Rose in my crease. And then I like that it has a dark brown in Cypress Umber. And I personally like that it has a black, because even if you're not using the black eyeshadow as an outer corner color or on the whole eye, if you're never going to use the black eyeshadow for that purpose, maybe you'll use it for an eyeliner. But for some people, I know they stay away from black entirely, so that might not be a need for you. So when you're looking at these palettes, think about what you're really going to use and if it's going to be really versatile for you. If you look at this palette and think that there's too many warm tones, I'm never going to use these colors, then this isn't the palette for you, and there are others out there. And just because it looks beautiful on some YouTuber and everybody's raving about it, it does not mean that there's something wrong with you if it doesn't work for you. Well, I'm going to give you an example of a palette that I bought that I'm kind of regretful about, because while I think it's beautiful, it's not very practical for my day-to-day life. and I rarely use it, which is sad because it is a beautiful palette. This is the Pat McGrath Subliminal in Platinum Bronze. I purchased this because I had swatched Pat McGrath eyeshadows in the past, and I thought their pigmentation, texture, blendability, everything was amazing. But I, like a lot of you, I'm sure, I didn't want to spend $120 some on an eyeshadow palette. So when these came out when they were $55, I thought, well, I can at least try a little bit more affordable version. And while I love the colors, I don't reach for this palette very much because it doesn't have, if I'm gonna buy a palette, I want it to have all the colors I need. So even though 6 colors, if I made my own palette, 6 colors would probably suffice, they're all shimmery. Well, this one is a matte, but it's a dark matte. There's no transition color. And as somebody who's more mature, who has more hooded eyes, I really don't like to put shimmer in my crease or shimmer all over my lid. These are high quality, beautiful shimmers that really don't emphasize texture like a glitter would or a chalky shimmer or a chunky shimmer would. They're beautiful, but as I said, it just doesn't have everything I need. And if you are somebody who only has maybe 5 minutes or less to put on your eyeshadow, this probably won't work for you unless you are someone who just will use one shade as a wash, put on some eyeliner, call it a day. So just because I'm saying that it wouldn't work for me, I'm not saying it doesn't mean it wouldn't work for you. My point is that I want you to look at a palette like this and say to yourself, and this is what I wish I had done, you know, it's beautiful, the shades are gorgeous, but it's not something I can see myself reaching for consistently. So that's when you fold it up and you put it back on the shelf at Sephora, and I kind of wish I had done that. But now that I have brought this palette out of hiding, I'm going to try to make an effort to actually use it. All right, let's recap. So we talked about eye color and what tones you should look for. We talked about price. We talked about what you're going to be using the palette for. We talked about texture and quality and blendability and what to look for there. And we've also talked about practicality. So these are all things that you really need to consider before purchasing. Now, I've already shown you a couple of my favorite eyeshadow palettes, the Soft Glam and the Tartelette and Bloom, but I wanted to talk to you a little bit about eyeshadow singles because that's something that I also recommend to friends, and I used to recommend to clients when they would ask me, what eyeshadow palette should I get? Or I need some new eyeshadows, what should I buy? A lot of times people look at a palette and I think, well, that's the easiest way to go. I mean, they're already there. I don't have to pick out the colors. I assume that the creator of this brand put together colors that are going to work together, although that's not always the case. But buying singles is one of the best ways if you're a beginner or if you just want to cut through all of it and you don't want to deal with having a palette of some colors that you know you're not going to use, then choose your own. MAC has great singles, Anastasia has great singles, Makeup Geek has great affordable singles, as well as Buxom. Buxom also has great singles. I love their compact that you can create at Sephora. I picked out all of these colors myself because I personally wanted a palette that had an underbrow and inner corner highlight, and when I'm more fair, white tends to work best. I wanted a gold lid color. I wanted a more neutral to cool lid color, like a little shimmer, because if you're familiar with my videos and my makeup looks, I tend to do a darker outer corner and a light shimmer on the lid. A nice neutral transition color, a little bit of a deeper transition color, or if I wanted just to do that in my outer corner, a deeper kind of reddish brown, because again, it works for my eye color. And then a black, because I've already said I like to have a black in a palette. So Buxom is another one. And this video is not sponsored. They didn't ask me to do this video or promote it. It's just something that I think gets really overlooked. It's a brand that I think gets really overlooked and has really nice quality products. And some other personal favorites, and I say personal because these are palettes that I bought because they do flatter my eye color and they do suit my needs. So I really like the Urban Decay Naked Heat palette. This one I use a lot. Beautiful on blue and green eyes. It's beautiful on brown eyes as well. Another favorite of mine is the Too Faced Sweet Peach. Aside from loving the way it smells, I feel like I can do so many looks with this palette, day into night. I can do a peachy, springy look. I can do a more fall look. I can do a real smoky eye. I can do plums. There's just so much versatility in this, and I don't think a lot of people see that when they look at it. they just see like these peach colors and this green, and I don't even think I've ever used the green in here. Again, you have to think of cost and the value. Like if you look at this palette and you think to yourself, well, there's actually only 2 or 3 that I might not use, then it might be worth investing in the whole palette. But if there's a whole 6 or 9 eyeshadows in a palette that you don't think you'd use, then I would probably pass on the palette. Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance is another personal favorite, but could be very, very warm for some people. And then the NARS Wanted palette. This one is newer to me and I love it for the same reasons I love the others. It's just versatile. It just suits my needs. And I've also stated in other videos that I don't really like big palettes. So those big Morphe palettes, I rarely use them because they're just so cumbersome. Like other people commented on the video where I said that I don't like big palettes. They said they were just like me, that there's just not enough space on the vanity to work with them. And sometimes you want to be able to hold the product closer to your face, especially as you get older. It just seems like we can see the colors better if they're closer to our face. And I just love the size of this. I love the pigmentation, the blendability. I love that there's some beautiful shimmers in there. And a lot of you watching might be thinking, dang, she's got a lot of similar palettes. Well, I do. And as I said, this video is not for the makeup junkie or makeup hoarder like myself. This video is to hopefully help those of you, as I said at the beginning, that don't want to end up with a pile of similar looking eyeshadows. I really do hope this video helped you in some way. I hope that the next time you go to Sephora or Ulta or even the drugstore and you're looking at eyeshadow palettes, at least now you might have some sort of checklist in your head that can help you narrow things down or perhaps walk away from something you don't need. And if you did like the video, as always, I really appreciate you giving it a thumbs up, and please subscribe and follow me on Instagram and Facebook. Those are both Risa Does Makeup. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you again soon.